People thought they already understood Keanu Reeves, the quiet guy, the humble Hollywood star, the man who smiles politely and disappears before the cameras can turn him into a headline. But one rare interview changed the way millions looked at him forever, not because he exposed scandals, not because he attacked anyone, but because for a few honest minutes, the mask completely disappeared. No performance, no fake energy, just a man speaking carefully about loneliness, love, loss, and what it actually feels like to survive fame while carrying pain nobody around you can fully see. Clips from that conversation spread everywhere online because people realized something uncomfortable. Keanu wasn't trying to sound deep, he was simply telling the truth. And the silence in his words somehow hit louder than anything Hollywood usually says. Most celebrity interviews feel predictable, the same rehearsed answers, the same carefully controlled stories designed to protect an image. But this conversation felt different almost immediately. Even the way Keanu Reeves answered questions sounded slower and more thoughtful than what audiences are used to hearing from Hollywood stars. There was no desperate attempt to go viral, no exaggerated emotional speech, no forced inspirational lines. And maybe that is exactly why people connected to it so deeply. One of the moments that spread across social media the fastest came from an older televised conversation where Keanu was asked what happens after people die. Instead of giving a dramatic answer or trying to sound philosophical, he paused for a second and quietly said, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." That was it. Simple words. But millions of people online reacted because it felt painfully real. The clip was shared everywhere, not because it was shocking, but because it sounded human. Even years later, people still repost that moment because it does not feel scripted. It feels honest. The reason audiences respond so strongly to Keanu is because his personality has stayed unusually consistent for decades. Many actors completely change once fame surrounds them. Their interviews become more controlled. Their behavior becomes less natural. But with Keanu, people keep noticing the opposite. There are countless public moments where he acts almost uncomfortable with celebrity culture itself. Fans have pointed out for years how he avoids acting superior around strangers. There are real videos of him giving up seats on public transportation, speaking kindly to crew members, quietly helping people on film sets, and avoiding attention even when cameras are around. None of these moments alone created his reputation. It was the consistency over time that mattered. During interviews about the John Wick films, Keanu often shifted praise away from himself and towards stunt teams, fight coordinators, directors, and crew members. In behind-the-scenes footage released during promotional tours, people noticed how seriously he respected the work of everyone around him. That behavior became important because audiences are used to seeing celebrities make every conversation about themselves. Keanu rarely does that, and because of it, viewers started trusting him more than they trust most famous people. But the internet did not truly explode because people suddenly discovered he was nice. The emotional reaction came from something deeper. People started realizing how much pain existed behind his calm personality. And importantly, most of these stories were not created by gossip channels. They came from real interviews and publicly known events throughout his life. Keanu lost his best friend River Phoenix in the 1990s. Their friendship was well documented during the period when both were rising stars. Years later, people still revisit interviews and photographs showing how close they were. Keanu rarely speaks in dramatic detail about private grief, but when he has mentioned loss in interviews, his tone changes noticeably. There is no Hollywood performance attached to it, just quiet sadness. Then there was the heartbreaking situation involving his daughter, and later the loss of his former partner Jennifer Syme. These are not rumors. These are real tragedies that became publicly known years ago, and despite experiencing losses that would emotionally destroy many people, Keanu continued working while becoming even quieter as time passed. Fans eventually began connecting the dots. They started understanding why so much loneliness seems to exist beneath his calm voice. In a conversation with Interview magazine years ago, Keanu openly admitted that grief changes shape over time instead of disappearing. He explained that people mistakenly think grief ends neatly when in reality it stays with you differently forever. That interview resonated strongly online because so many viewers recognized themselves in those words. He was not pretending to have perfect answers. He was describing emotional survival honestly. That honesty became even more powerful because Keanu never built his public image around tragedy. He does not constantly remind audiences about painful events from his life. In fact, most fans discovered those details accidentally while watching interviews or reading older articles. And that restraint matters. People can usually sense when celebrities use personal pain as branding. With Keanu, audiences feel the opposite. He often appears uncomfortable discussing deeply personal experiences at all. Another reason this rare interview connected emotionally is because Keanu speaks differently from most stars. There are pauses in his answers, moments where he seems to search carefully for truthful words instead of rushing toward polished statements. Some viewers originally mistook that for awkwardness years ago. Now many people see it as sincerity. He sounds like someone trying not to fake emotions for entertainment. There was also a noticeable shift in public perception after the massive success of the John Wick franchise. Before John Wick, younger audiences mainly knew Keanu from movies like The Matrix or older action classics. But John Wick introduced him again to an entirely different generation. Suddenly, millions of younger viewers began watching older interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, convention appearances, and fan interactions. And the more content people found, the more unusual his behavior seemed compared to normal celebrity culture. During promotional interviews for John Wick chapters, Keanu repeatedly spoke about discipline, teamwork, and gratitude towards stunt performers. Videos of his intense training sessions spread everywhere online. People were shocked by how committed he remained physically and mentally to the role despite already being an established Hollywood icon. But again, what impressed audiences most was not arrogance. It was humility. He never acted like training made him superior. He treated the process like collaborative work. Fans especially loved seeing how respectfully he interacted with interviewers. Even during repetitive press tours where actors usually become impatient, Keanu stayed calm and attentive. There are many viral clips where nervous interviewers clearly expected a cold Hollywood celebrity and instead received thoughtful answers and kindness. Over time, those moments built trust with audiences. One interview that fans constantly reference involved Stephen Colbert asking Keanu what he thinks happens when we die. The emotional reaction online was immediate after Keanu quietly answered, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." That moment became one of the most shared celebrity interview clips online because people recognized genuine emotion behind it. There was no attempt to dominate the conversation or deliver a dramatic monologue. The simplicity made it stronger. People also became fascinated with how Keanu handles loneliness. In multiple interviews across different years, he has hinted at spending long periods alone, riding motorcycles, reading, traveling quietly, or simply staying away from Hollywood parties. Instead of portraying isolation as glamorous, he talks about it honestly. Sometimes it sounds peaceful, and that emotional complexity feels real to audiences who are tired of fake perfection online. Another thing fans admire is his relationship with fame itself. Keanu often behaves like someone who never fully trusted celebrity culture. Even after decades in Hollywood, he still appears slightly detached from the machine surrounding him. There are stories from film crews and fellow actors describing him as respectful, private, and unusually grounded for someone with his level of success. While internet mythology sometimes exaggerates celebrity stories, many accounts about Keanu come directly from colleagues who worked beside him. For example, during productions of the Matrix films, crew members and stunt teams publicly discussed how appreciative he was toward everyone involved. There are also widely reported stories about him sharing bonuses with stunt teams and technical workers connected to films. What made those stories spread online was not just generosity itself, it was the fact that the people telling these stories sounded genuinely surprised. The internet eventually created a strange emotional attachment to Keanu because he represents something many people feel is disappearing from modern celebrity culture: sincerity without self-promotion. Audiences today constantly see influencers manufacturing emotional moments for attention, so when someone behaves naturally without aggressively chasing headlines, people notice immediately. There is also another reason these interviews feel emotionally heavy. Keanu speaks like someone who understands impermanence deeply. In conversations about relationships, friendships, mortality, and time, he often sounds aware that everything can disappear suddenly. Viewers who know about his personal losses naturally connect those emotions together. But importantly, he never turns conversations into self-pity. There is sadness in his words sometimes, but also acceptance. That balance is rare. Many public figures either hide pain completely or perform it dramatically for sympathy. Keanu usually does neither. He acknowledges difficult emotions quietly and moves forward. And strangely, that calmness often hits harder emotionally than dramatic breakdowns ever could. During one appearance discussing life experiences, Keanu described how grief and love remain connected forever. Fans online reacted strongly because the statement sounded deeply personal without becoming overly detailed. People began sharing clips alongside comments about their own losses, family members, heartbreaks, and loneliness. Suddenly, the interview stopped being just another celebrity moment. It became emotional for ordinary viewers watching at home. Social media played a huge role in spreading these reactions. Short clips from interviews started appearing everywhere with millions of views. Younger audiences who had never watched full interviews before suddenly became interested in Keanu as a person rather than only an actor. Many comments repeated the same idea. He feels real. And honestly, that single word explains almost everything. In modern entertainment culture, real has become extremely rare. People are constantly surrounded by performances pretending to be authenticity, polished vulnerability, calculated honesty, emotional marketing disguised as sincerity. Audiences have become skilled at detecting manipulation. So when someone speaks naturally without obvious performance tactics, people emotionally react much more strongly. Keanu also benefits from something difficult to fake over decades: consistency. If one emotional interview existed by itself, audiences might ignore it. But Keanu's reputation has been built slowly across many years through repeated public behavior. Fans compare stories from different decades and notice the same personality traits appearing again and again: quietness, politeness, introspection, awkward humor, emotional restraint, respect toward strangers, discomfort with excessive fame. Even stories about him sitting alone eating sandwiches on park benches somehow became internet mythology because people viewed those images as symbolic. Not symbolic of sadness necessarily, but symbolic of someone untouched by Hollywood ego despite living inside that world for years. Of course, internet culture sometimes exaggerates celebrities into almost mythical figures, and Keanu himself would probably dislike being treated like a perfect human being. That is another important reason fans respect him. He does not pretend perfection exists. In interviews, he openly admits uncertainty, mistakes, loneliness, and confusion about life. He sounds like someone still figuring things out despite decades of fame. There is one particular quality viewers repeatedly mention after watching his interviews: emotional patience. Keanu rarely interrupts people aggressively. He listens carefully. He pauses before answering. Sometimes he even lets silence exist naturally instead of rushing to fill every second. Those small behaviors might sound unimportant, but psychologically they change how audiences experience conversations. Viewers subconsciously feel calmer watching him speak. During long-form interviews, you can often see interviewers slowly changing their tone as conversations continue. They start more formally, then gradually become more relaxed because Keanu responds with genuine attention rather than celebrity performance energy. That emotional shift is part of why clips become memorable online. His fans also appreciate that he never aggressively defends his reputation. In an industry obsessed with image management, Keanu usually avoids public drama entirely. He does not spend huge amounts of time fighting criticism online or constantly explaining himself. That silence creates mystery, but it also creates dignity. And maybe the most emotional part of all this is the realization that kindness alone should not feel rare in society. Yet when audiences watch Keanu interact respectfully with ordinary people, many react emotionally because basic decency now feels unusual in celebrity culture. That is why the interview broke the internet, not because there was scandal, not because there was controversy, not because shocking secrets were exposed. It exploded because millions of people unexpectedly saw vulnerability without manipulation, sadness without performance, kindness without branding, and honesty without ego. For a few minutes, audiences stopped watching a Hollywood star and started listening to a human being who sounded tired, thoughtful, grateful, and painfully aware of how fragile life can become. And maybe that is why the clips continue spreading years later. Because deep down, people are not only reacting to Keanu Reeves himself, they are reacting to the feeling they get while hearing someone speak honestly in a world that often rewards fake behavior more than truth. There is another layer to why audiences became so emotionally attached to these interviews, and it has less to do with Hollywood and more to do with timing. People today are exhausted. Every day online feels louder, faster, more aggressive, more performative. Celebrities fight publicly for attention, influencers manufacture emotional breakdowns for clicks, and every conversation somehow becomes about branding. Then suddenly, viewers watch Keanu Reeves sitting quietly in an interview answering questions like a normal human being, and the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. You can actually see it happen in reaction videos and comment sections. People start the interview expecting entertainment and end it talking about loneliness, grief, family, purpose, and emotional survival. One reason this happened is because Keanu never speaks like somebody trying to win a debate. He speaks like somebody trying to understand life while living through it. And there is a massive emotional difference between those two things. In older interviews from the 1990s and early 2000s, you can already notice this quality. Even when he was younger and starring in huge films like Speed and The Matrix, he often answered questions with an unusual amount of reflection compared to other actors around him. While many celebrities learned how to dominate interviews with charisma and rehearse stories, Keanu often sounded like somebody slightly uncomfortable being analyzed publicly at all. Instead of controlling conversations aggressively, he usually responded thoughtfully and moved carefully through topics. That quietness became more meaningful as audiences learned more about the tragedies and losses he experienced privately over the years. Fans started revisiting old interviews differently because they realized pain had likely existed beneath the surface even during moments when he appeared calm publicly. What makes this emotionally powerful is that Keanu never built his career around presenting himself as a victim. He did not constantly center interviews around suffering. He did not turn personal heartbreak into marketing. Most of the emotional connection came from audiences discovering pieces gradually through real interviews, documented life events, and the consistency of his behavior over decades. Another important detail many viewers notice is how differently Keanu treats success compared to typical celebrity culture. When actors become attached to billion-dollar franchises, interviews often become celebrations of ego and status. But during conversations about John Wick, The Matrix, or other projects, Keanu repeatedly redirected praise toward directors, stunt coordinators, fight teams, and technical crews. There are multiple behind-the-scenes videos where stunt performers speak positively about him not because he acted like a superstar, but because he treated everyone professionally and respectfully. Audiences notice those details because respect is difficult to fake consistently across decades and across hundreds of different interactions. One viral moment that fans constantly discuss came during an interview where Keanu spoke about love after loss. Instead of giving a dramatic speech, he admitted in a quiet and honest way that grief never fully disappears. He explained that people carry loss with them while continuing forward in life. That idea spread online rapidly because millions of viewers related to it immediately. There was no fake motivational language attached to it, no everything happens for a reason speech, just honest acknowledgement that pain changes people permanently. For audiences dealing with their own heartbreaks, deaths in the family, loneliness, or emotional exhaustion, hearing a major celebrity speak this way felt unexpectedly comforting. It felt real. There are also countless fan stories that strengthened his public image over time. People shared experiences about meeting him in airports, restaurants, film locations, or random public places where he behaved politely and quietly. Now, obviously, internet stories should always be treated carefully because online exaggeration exists everywhere, but what made these stories stand out was how similar they sounded to each other over many years. Strangers repeatedly described him as reserved, respectful, and emotionally present during interactions. Even small gestures became memorable because audiences are so used to hearing negative celebrity stories instead. Another reason the internet became emotionally attached to Keanu is because he somehow represents an older style of masculinity that many people feel disappeared from mainstream culture. He does not behave aggressively to prove confidence. He does not constantly seek validation publicly. He does not insult people for attention, and he does not pretend to have all the answers. Instead, he often appears thoughtful, emotionally aware, and comfortable admitting uncertainty. Younger audiences especially reacted strongly to this because modern online culture often rewards loudness and arrogance. Keanu feels like the opposite of that energy, and because of it, many viewers describe his interviews as calming. There are fans who literally leave his interviews playing in the background because the tone feels peaceful compared to most celebrity content online. One conversation that continued spreading across social media involved Keanu discussing mortality and memory. Again, what shocked viewers was not complexity, it was simplicity. His words sounded honest enough that audiences projected their own emotions into them. That is important because the strongest emotional storytelling usually works exactly that way. Instead of forcing emotion aggressively, it creates space for viewers to connect their own experiences. Keanu naturally does this during interviews because he rarely overexplains himself emotionally. He leaves silence inside conversations. And strangely, that silence often becomes more powerful than dramatic speeches. There is also something deeply human about the fact that Keanu still appears slightly awkward despite decades of fame. Many celebrities become hyper-polished after years in Hollywood. Every sentence feels rehearsed. Every laugh feels timed. Every emotional moment feels strategically designed for social media clips. But Keanu still sometimes pauses awkwardly, searches for words carefully, or smiles in ways that feel uncertain rather than calculated. Audiences trust those imperfections because they resemble real life. One reason fans defend him so passionately online is because they see authenticity in those moments. They do not view him as perfect, they view him as genuine. And there is a huge difference between those two ideas. Perfection creates distance. Authenticity creates emotional connection. During promotional tours for John Wick, interviewers often tried to push Keanu into becoming a meme or internet moment because they knew audiences loved him. But interestingly, many of the most viral clips happened accidentally instead of through forced comedy. For example, simple interactions where he respectfully listened to interviewers or reacted thoughtfully became more memorable than rehearsed jokes. Viewers sensed sincerity instead of performance. Even his body language became part of the conversation online. Fans noticed how attentive he appeared while others were speaking. He looked at people carefully. He listened fully before responding. And while these qualities should honestly be normal human behavior, modern media culture made them feel rare. Another powerful reason people connect emotionally to Keanu is because he seems to understand loneliness without romanticizing it. In some interviews, he talks about solitude almost peacefully. In others, there is sadness underneath the words. But he never transforms isolation into fake philosophical branding. He speaks about it naturally, like somebody who genuinely experiences long periods of reflection and silence. Viewers who feel disconnected from modern society often recognize themselves in that energy. And because loneliness has become increasingly common in the digital age, many people emotionally attach to celebrities who express those feelings honestly. There's also the strange paradox of Keanu's fame. Despite being one of the most recognizable actors in the world, he often appears detached from celebrity status itself. He still rides motorcycles, disappears from public attention for long periods, avoids constant media exposure, and generally behaves more like a private person than a Hollywood machine. Fans interpret this as evidence that he never fully surrendered himself to fame psychologically. And that idea fascinates people because celebrity culture usually consumes personalities completely over time. Another reason the interview spread so aggressively online is because audiences are becoming more emotionally intelligent about media manipulation. People now recognize when celebrities are performing vulnerability for attention. They notice calculated crying. They notice scripted authenticity. They notice emotional marketing disguised as honesty. So when Keanu speaks quietly and without obvious performance tactics, viewers instinctively trust it more. That trust is incredibly valuable today because public trust in celebrities overall has dropped massively in recent years. Many viewers feel exhausted by constant scandals, fake apologies, attention-seeking behavior, and aggressive self-promotion from public figures. Keanu feels emotionally refreshing by comparison because he rarely appears desperate for relevance. And ironically, that is one reason he stays relevant. Audiences can feel when somebody is chasing attention too aggressively. Keanu usually does the opposite. He seems happiest when focusing on work itself rather than celebrity culture surrounding it. Another important thing people overlook is how much discipline exists behind his calm personality. While audiences focus emotionally on his kindness and sadness, fellow actors and stunt professionals often talk about his work ethic. Training for action films like John Wick required intense physical preparation over many years. Behind-the-scenes footage shows long rehearsal sessions involving martial arts choreography, weapon handling, stunt coordination, and physically exhausting action sequences. What impressed crews was reportedly not just effort, but attitude. Keanu approached the work seriously without acting superior. Again, audiences connected emotionally because humility combined with discipline feels increasingly rare in entertainment culture. There is also a deeper emotional layer involving aging in Hollywood. Many actors become bitter or defensive as time changes their careers. But Keanu's later career resurgence through John Wick felt different because audiences genuinely wanted him to succeed. People celebrated his comeback emotionally instead of ironically. They were happy for him. And that emotional investment came directly from the reputation he built over decades through interviews and public behavior. Viewers did not only admire the action scenes, they admired the human being performing them. That emotional goodwill cannot be manufactured instantly by public relations teams. It develops slowly through years of consistency. Fans also appreciate that Keanu rarely speaks down to audiences. In interviews about films, philosophy, or life experiences, he communicates simply and sincerely rather than trying to sound intellectually superior. Even when discussing complex emotions, his language stays grounded and understandable. That simplicity is powerful because audiences emotionally connect faster to honesty and to overly polished intellectual performances. There are moments in interviews where Keanu almost seems surprised that people care so deeply about what he says. And maybe that humility is part of what protects his authenticity. He does not appear obsessed with becoming a cultural guru or inspirational icon. He simply answers questions honestly when asked. Then the internet transforms those moments into emotional symbols because viewers are hungry for sincerity. One fascinating detail is how different generations connect to him for different reasons. Older audiences remember his early films and decades of steady work. Younger audiences discovered him through John Wick memes, viral interviews, and social media clips. But eventually both groups arrived at similar conclusions emotionally. They saw somebody who survived enormous personal pain without becoming cruel, arrogant, or emotionally numb publicly. And that idea resonates deeply in modern society where many people feel emotionally exhausted themselves. When Keanu talks about grief, time, relationships, or memory, viewers often feel like they are listening to someone who truly understands loss instead of somebody pretending wisdom for attention. That distinction matters enormously. Audiences can forgive awkwardness, they can forgive emotional restraint. What they struggle to forgive is fake humanity. Keanu rarely feels fake, and maybe that is why the internet reacted so strongly to those interviews. Because underneath the fame, the action movies, the memes, and the celebrity image, people unexpectedly found something rare. Not perfection, not mythology, not manufactured inspiration. Just a human being speaking carefully about life with honesty that felt increasingly uncommon in the modern world. If this interview hit you emotionally too, then maybe that says something important about the kind of honesty people are searching for today. Keanu Reeves never needed loud speeches or fake perfection to connect with millions. Sometimes quiet truth speaks louder than anything else. If you enjoyed this video, drop your favorite Keanu moment in the comments and tell us which interview changed the way you saw him forever. And if you want more real celebrity stories told with honesty instead of fake drama, subscribe and stay here for the next one, because sometimes the most unforgettable Hollywood moments are the ones that feel completely human.